The stars flickered wrong tonight. Commander Vex of the Galactic Collective stood on the observation deck of Station Prime, watching reality bend at the edges of known space. What had once been the reliable constellation of Andros now pulsed with colors that shouldn't exist, deep purples bleeding into sounds, golden hues that tasted of copper fear. "Sir," Lieutenant Cora approached, her usually steady voice trembling, "the distortions are spreading. 3 more sectors have reported anomalies." Vex turned from the viewport, his 4 eyes narrowing as he processed the data streaming across his neural implant. Gravity wells reversing themselves. Time flowing backward in pocket dimensions. Ships arriving at destinations before they'd departed. The fundamental laws of physics were unraveling like a badly woven tapestry. When did this begin? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. 72 hours ago. The same time the Zortan raiders hit the human archaeological site on Kepler-4, the humans. Of course it came back to them. In the 300 years since first contact, the galaxy had learned to approach humanity with a mixture of respect and wariness. They were young, barely out of their planetary cradle, yet they possessed something the older races had long forgotten, or perhaps never had. Where other species saw the universe as a vast machine to be understood and catalogued, humans saw it as a living thing to be felt, explored, embraced. What exactly did the Zortans take? Vex demanded. Cora's scales shifted to a nervous pale blue. According to the human archaeological team, it was just a small metallic cube. Pre-space flight era. They called it ... a music box. A music box. Vex would have laughed if the situation weren't so dire. Leave it to humans to create something that could threaten the very fabric of existence and call it something so innocent. The emergency klaxon began to wail, and the station shuddered as another wave of distortion passed through local space. Through the viewport, Vex watched a nearby asteroid suddenly bloom into a flower made of crystallized starlight before dissolving into mathematical equations that spelled out someone's name in a language that predated speech. "Get me the human." "Representative," Vex commanded. Now minutes later, Dr. Maya No. That name was too complex for the current crisis. Dr. Hope appeared on the screen, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. She was young for a human, barely past her 40th year, but her eyes held the weight of someone who understood the magnitude of what had been unleashed. "Commander Vex," she said simply. "I assume you're calling about the artifact. Your people's music box is tearing apart reality," Vex stated bluntly. "What is it really?" Hope was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, Vex could hear something that made his blood run cold, the sound of a child humming a lullaby, echoing from impossible distances across the channel. "It's complicated," Hope finally said. "We didn't fully understand it ourselves. The artifact dates back to Earth's early 21st century. It belonged to a little girl named Emma. Her father made it for her before he died in one of the old wars." The humming grew louder, and Vex realized it wasn't coming through the It was coming from everywhere, as if the station itself had begun to sing. "The girl," Hope continued, her voice thick with emotion. "She poured everything into that box. Her love, her grief, her hope for her father's return. She sang to it every night for 60 years until she died. By then, it had become something more than metal and gears. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you." "What do you mean?" Vex asked, though part of him already knew. "It became a repository of pure human emotion," Hope whispered. "And emotion, Commander, is the one force in the universe that your science has never been able to measure or contain. The Zortans didn't just steal an artifact. They stole a piece of the human soul." The Zorton vessel Deathclaw hung in the void like a predator waiting to strike, its hull scarred from countless raids across the outer rim. Captain Grix paced the bridge, his rage building with each passing hour. The artifact they'd stolen should have been worth a fortune on the black market. Ancient human technology always commanded high prices from collectors. Instead, it sat in their cargo hold, humming that infernal tune while reality warped around them. "Status report," Grix snarled at his navigation officer. "Sir, we're somewhere," came the hesitant reply. "The star charts don't match anything in our database. According to sensors, we should be inside a gas giant, but we're clearly in open space. Also, the cargo hold is reporting impossible readings." Grix's tail lashed in frustration. His crew, battle-hardened pirates who'd terrorized shipping lanes for decades, were jumping at shadows. 3 of his warriors had reported seeing their dead mothers in the corridors. The ship's computer kept playing music from species that had gone extinct millennia ago. And worst of all, something was crying in the ventilation system, the soft, heartbroken sobs of a human child. In the cargo hold, the music box sat innocuously on a metal table. It was smaller than Grix had expected when they'd raided the human dig site, barely the size of his fist. The metal was tarnished with age, and primitive gears were visible through a crystal window on top. When wound, it played a simple melody, while a tiny figurine, a human female in a flowing dress, spun slowly in circles. But this was no ordinary music box. The air around it shimmered with possibility, and crew members who stayed too long near it began to change. Their eyes would take on a distant look, and they'd start humming the melody without realizing it. Some claimed they could hear voices, conversations between a father and daughter, promises of return, bedtime stories told in hushed tones. "We need to get rid of this thing," muttered Chief Engineer Rock, his usual bravado completely absent. "It's cursing the ship." Grix backhanded him across the snout. "We don't abandon valuable cargo because of superstition." But even as he said it, Grix could feel the artifact's influence. Memories that were his own flickered through his mind. A small human girl crying for her father, tiny hands winding the music box over and over, willing it to bring him home through sheer force of love and desperation. The bridge crackled to life with an incoming transmission. Commander Vex's image appeared on screen, flanked by the human representative Dr. Hope. "Captain Grix," Vex began, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "You need to return what you've stolen, immediately." Grix bared his fangs in what passed for a Zorton smile. "The mighty collective, negotiating with pirates? How far you've fallen, Commander. What's it worth to you?" "You don't understand," Dr. Hope interjected, stepping forward. "That artifact isn't just valuable, it's dangerous. The emotional resonance stored within it is interacting with quantum fields, creating reality distortions. Every minute you keep it, the effect spreads." "Human emotions?" Grix laughed, though the sound rang hollow even to his own ears. "Your species always was overly sentimental." "Sentiment?" Hope's eyes flashed with something that made even the hardened pirate captain step back. "That artifact contains the concentrated love of a child for her father, sustained over a lifetime. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, Captain. It binds atoms, ignites stars, and shapes destiny itself. We just learned how to contain it." As if responding to her words, the music box's melody grew louder, echoing through the ship's corridors. The humming that had plagued them for days intensified, and suddenly every screen on the bridge lit up with the same image, a human child, no more than 6 years old, with tears streaming down her face as she clutched the music box to her chest. "Daddy," the image whispered, and the words seemed to tear through the fabric of space itself. "Please come home." The ship shuddered as another wave of distortion passed through them. Through the viewports, the stars began to rearrange themselves, forming patterns that looked almost like ... words, messages, Written in light across the cosmos. Grix realized with growing horror that they weren't just witnessing the breakdown of reality. They were seeing the universe itself trying to answer a little girl's prayer, attempting to bend the laws of physics to bring back someone who had been dead for over 2 centuries. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Return the artifact to us," Hope said simply. "Let us contain it before it tears apart everything we know." But as Grix looked at his crew, tough warriors now reduced to trembling shadows of themselves, he wondered if it was already too late. Dr. Hope stood in the laboratory aboard the human research vessel Unity, her hands shaking as she prepared the containment protocols. The emergency rendezvous with the Zortan pirates had been arranged in neutral space, far from any inhabited systems, but even here the effects of the artifact were visible. Phantom auroras danced between the ships, and space itself seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a child's heartbeat. "Are you certain about this?" asked her colleague, Dr. Marcus Kell, as he double-checked the isolation chamber they'd hastily constructed. "We've never attempted to contain something with this level of emotional resonance," Hope nodded grimly. "Emma's love has been growing stronger over the decades, feeding on quantum fluctuations and cosmic background radiation. The artifact isn't just playing her father's favorite song anymore. It's trying to resurrect him from pure will and memory." Through the laboratory's viewports, they could see the Zortan ship Deathclaw approaching. Even from this distance, reality seemed to bend around it. The vessel's hull flickered between states of being, sometimes appearing as the battle-scarred raider it was, other times manifesting as a child's drawing of a spaceship, crude but filled with innocent hope. The transfer was conducted remotely, using robotic arms to move the music box from one ship to another. The moment it entered the Unity's cargo bay, every human aboard felt in a wave of profound sadness mixed with desperate, unconditional love. Several crew members began to weep without understanding why. "Emotional resonance is off the charts," reported Dr. Lisa Ward from her monitoring station. "The artifact's affecting our neural patterns from 3 decks away." Hope approached the isolation chamber carefully. Inside, the music box sat on a pedestal, its tiny dancer still spinning to that haunting melody. But now she could see what the Zortans had missed. The artifact wasn't just playing music. It was actively scanning quantum states, searching through infinite possibilities for one specific pattern, the quantum signature of a human male who had died fighting in Earth's water wars over 200 years ago. "Emma," Hope whispered, addressing the long-dead child whose love had created this impossible situation. "I know you're in there. I know you're still waiting for him." The music box's melody shifted slightly, becoming more complex, more aware. Through the chamber's speakers, they could hear it, a voice, young and filled with desperate hope. "He promised he'd come back," the voice said, and every human in the lab felt their hearts break a little. "He always kept his promises before." "Commander." Vex's image appeared on the communication screen, his alien features tight with concern. "Dr. Hope, we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout this sector. Whatever that artifact is doing, it's getting worse." "She's trying to create him," Hope explained, her voice filled with wonder and terror. "Emma's love has become so powerful that it's attempting to restructure matter at the quantum level, to literally will her father back into existence." "Is that possible?" Vex asked. Hope looked at the readouts streaming across her screens, impossible energy readings, quantum states that shouldn't exist, the very foundations of physics straining under the weight of a child's love. "Humans have always been told that love conquers all," she said quietly. "We just never realized it might be literally true." The artifact's humming grew more intense, and suddenly the laboratory was filled with the scent of earth flowers, jasmine, and roses. The kind a father might have brought home to his daughter. The air shimmered, and for just a moment, they could see him, a tall man in military fatigues, reaching out with arms that existed in memory more than reality. "Emma," the ghostly figure whispered, and his voice carried the weight of 2 centuries. of separation. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I tried to come home. The music box spun faster, its melody becoming a symphony of joy and grief intertwined. The laboratory's walls began to fade, replaced by the interior of a small apartment on Earth, a child's bedroom with toys scattered on the floor and pictures drawn in crayon taped to the walls. We have to stop this, Dr. Kell said urgently. If she succeeds in bringing him back, the energy required will create a cascade failure in local space-time. But Hope was transfixed by what she was seeing. This wasn't just resurrection, it was love given form, emotion made manifest. Everything humanity had ever believed about the power of the heart was playing out before their eyes. How do you tell? A child she has to let go? Hope asked, tears streaming down her face. How do you explain that some promises can't be kept, no matter how much love stands behind them? The phantom figure of Emma's father was becoming more solid, more real, and with each passing second, the fabric of reality grew thinner around them. Reality buckled and twisted as the impossible reunion unfolded within the Unity's laboratory. The ghostly figure of Emma's father solidified further, his military uniform becoming more detailed, his face taking on the weathered features of a man who had seen too much war. Around them, the child's bedroom from centuries past overlaid the scientific equipment like a double-exposure photograph, two time periods bleeding into one another. Status report. Commander Vex's voice crackled through the communications array, though his image flickered between his actual alien form and that of a concerned human. Grandfather, Emma's memories reshaping even their perceptions. The artifact is creating a localized reality bubble, Dr. Hope reported, her scientific training warring with the raw emotion coursing through the room. Emma's love has reached critical mass. She's not just trying to bring her father back, she's recreating their entire world. The music box spun faster, its simple melody now accompanied by an entire orchestra that existed only in memory. The phantom father knelt down, his arms outstretched toward a little girl who flickered in and out of existence like a candle flame in the wind. "Daddy!" Emma's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, filled with the pure joy of a child who believes in impossible things. "You came back, you kept your promise." Dr. Hope stepped closer to the containment field, her heart breaking as she watched the scene unfold. The love between father and daughter was so intense, it had actual mass, bending light and warping space around them. But she could also see the cost cracks spreading through reality itself, quantum storms brewing in the emptiness between atoms. "Emma," Hope called out gently. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" The ghostly child turned, her form solidifying as she focused on Hope's voice. She was exactly as she had been in life 6 years old, with bright eyes and tangled hair, wearing a nightgown decorated with pictures of spaceships and stars. "Who are you?" Emma asked, her hand still clutched in her father's translucent grip. "I'm a friend," Hope said, kneeling to be at the child's eye level. "I study the stars, just like you wanted to when you grew up." Emma's eyes widened with wonder. "You travel in space. Do you know where my daddy went?" "He said he had to go fight the bad men, but that was a long time ago." The father's form wavered, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of infinite regret. "Emma, baby, I waited for you," Emma interrupted, her voice taking on the echoes of an old woman's lifetime of hope deferred. "I wound the music box every night, just like you taught me. I knew you'd hear it and find your way home." Hope felt tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the conversation that had been decades in the making. But around them, the Unity's hull groaned under impossible stresses. Through the viewports, she could see space itself beginning to fray, stars going out as reality struggled to accommodate Emma's impossible wish. "Listen to me, Emma," Hope said urgently. "Your love for your daddy is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's so powerful that it's changing the entire universe, but good," Emma declared with the absolute certainty of childhood. "If the universe won't let Daddy come home, Then I'll make a new one where he can." The laboratory shuddered as another wave of distortion passed through them. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship as systems failed and reformed according to Emma's innocent understanding of how things should work. "The cascade is accelerating," Dr. Kell reported, his voice tight with fear. "If this continues, the reality distortion will spread beyond our ability to contain it." Hope looked at the father and daughter, still locked in their impossible embrace, and realized what she had to do. She deactivated the containment field and stepped into the bubble of altered reality, feeling the weight of Emma's love wash over her like a tide of pure emotion. "Emma," she said, reaching out to touch the child's ghostly hand, "your daddy loves you very much. But love sometimes means letting go." The little girl looked up at her with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. "But if I let go, he'll leave again." "No, sweetheart," Hope whispered, her voice breaking. "He'll always be with you. Love doesn't need bodies or voices or music boxes. It just is." Emma's father nodded, his form beginning to fade as he finally found the words he'd been trying to say for 2 centuries. "She's right, Emma. I never really left you. I've been here, in your heart, in your memories, in every note of our song." The music box's melody began to slow, its frantic spinning settling into a gentler rhythm. Around them, the overlaid reality started to separate, the child's bedroom fading as the laboratory reasserted itself. "Will I see you again?" Emma asked, her small hand slipping from her father's as both figures became translucent. "Every time you remember how much I love you," he promised. "Every time you help someone else find their way home." As the 2 figures dissolved into points of light, Hope felt the weight of an entire lifetime of love and loss settle into her bones. The music box gave one final, perfect note, and then fell silent. The aftermath was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. As Emma's love finally found peace, the reality distortions didn't simply fade, they transformed. Throughout known space, impossible things began to happen, but this time they were miracles instead of catastrophes. Ships that had been lost for decades suddenly reappeared, their crews confused but unharmed, telling stories of being guided home by the sound of a child's lullaby. Broken families across 100 worlds found themselves inexplicably reunited. Even the most hardened warriors reported dreams of their own fathers, messages of love and forgiveness delivered across the veil of death. Aboard the Unity, Dr. Hope held the now silent music box in her hands. It felt lighter somehow, as if a great burden had been lifted from its ancient mechanisms. The tiny dancer still stood on her platform, but now she seemed to be waving goodbye rather than spinning in endless circles. "The quantum readings have stabilized," Dr. Kell reported, though his voice carried a note of wonder. "Whatever Emma did, she's changed the fundamental resonance frequency of this entire sector. Emotional energy is now measurable, quantifiable." "Commander." Vex appeared on the communication screen, his alien features softer than Hope had ever seen them. "Dr. Hope, we're receiving reports from across the collective. The effects of the artifact have spread, but they're beneficial. We're detecting what can only be described as waves of compassion sweeping through space." Hope nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. Emma didn't just let go of her father. She let go of all the love she'd been holding onto, released it into the universe itself. She gave us the greatest gift humanity has ever shared. The Zorton ship Deathclaw drifted nearby, its crew forever changed by their encounter with pure human emotion. Captain Grix had requested asylum with the collective, claiming that his days of raiding were over. Something about hearing a child cry for her father had awakened parts of his soul he'd thought were long dead. "What happens now?" asked Dr. Ward, monitoring the streams of data flowing in from across the galaxy. Hope looked out at the stars, which seemed somehow brighter now, as if they too had been touched by Emma's final act of love. "Now we learn. For centuries, other species have seen us as young, impulsive, driven by emotions they considered primitive. But Emma just proved that human emotion isn't a weakness, it's our greatest strength. She carefully placed the music box in a specially designed case, not to contain it, but to honor it. This artifact will be returned to Earth, to Emma's grave. But the changes she's made, the love she's released into the universe, that will ripple outward for eons. As if responding to her words, the music box gave one final gentle chime. Through its crystal window, Hope could see the tiny dancer, and for just a moment, she wasn't alone on her platform. A ghostly figure stood beside her, a tall man in military fatigues, his hand resting protectively on the dancer's shoulder. Then the image faded, leaving only the dancer, but she was smiling now. Her endless spinning had finally found purpose. Her mechanical movements transformed into a dance of joy rather than desperate hope. The Unity turned toward Earth, carrying its precious cargo home. Behind them, the collective fleet began to disperse, but they carried with them something new, an understanding that love, not logic, might be the true force that held the universe together. In the months that followed, historians would mark. This is the moment when humanity truly joined the galactic community, not as junior partners to be protected, but as teachers of something the older races had forgotten. They had shown that consciousness itself might be born from love, that the very stars might sing lullabies to their children, that a little girl's tears could reshape reality itself. And somewhere in the vast tapestry of space and time, Emma and her father walked hand in hand through fields of starlight, finally home after their long journey. The music box had served its purpose at last, proving that some promises are kept not in the way we expect, but in ways more beautiful than we could ever imagine. The universe had learned to love, and it would never be the same.